Nobody wakes up and decides to destroy something they love. Nobody falls asleep one night and wakes up a cheater. So why does it keep happening? To people just like you? To people just like me? To people who swore it would never be them? The answer isn't what therapists talk about. It isn't what your friends whisper about. And it isn't what you think. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you will change the way you see every relationship you've ever been in. I've spent years studying the psychology of human connection, the moments it breaks, the moments it bends, and the moments people make decisions they spend the rest of their lives explaining. This video isn't about judgment. It's not about taking sides. By the time we're done, here's exactly what you'll understand. One, recognition why most cheating has almost nothing to do with the other person. Two, the specific emotional void that most people never talk about, the one that quietly drives people toward betrayal. Three, and most importantly, what the research says about the kind of love that actually survives, and why most people are building the wrong thing entirely. This is not a hit piece. This is not a defense. This is the truth about one of the most human things we do and why we still don't understand it. Here's what we get wrong every single time someone cheats. We ask the wrong question. We ask, who was it? How long? How many times? When we should be asking, what was missing? And why couldn't they say so out loud? The most common assumption is that cheating is about attraction and about finding someone better, about wandering eyes and weak willpower. But here's what the data actually shows. In a landmark study from the Journal of Sex Research, researchers asked people who had cheated to name the primary reason. Only 8% said it was because they were in love with someone else. 8%. The rest said things like, I felt invisible. I needed to feel alive again. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. I stopped feeling like myself. This is not a story about desire. It's a story about disconnection. And here's the uncomfortable truth that almost nobody is willing to say out loud. Most people who cheat are not looking for someone new. They are looking for a version of themselves they lost somewhere in the relationship they're already in. Think about that for a second. What does it mean when someone needs to go outside a relationship to feel like themselves? Because here's what I want you to hold on to. And this is the question we're going to answer before this video is over. If cheating is really about a loss of self, then what is it about long-term love that makes so many people feel like they're disappearing? We'll get there. But first, we need to understand how the unraveling actually begins. There are 5 psychological forces that researchers have found drive people toward infidelity. Not one of them is what you expect. Point 1, the intimacy inversion. When two people fall in love, they do something instinctively beautiful. They share everything. Their fears, their failures, their embarrassing 3 a.m. thoughts, the things they've never told anyone. And that vulnerability is oxygen. It's what makes early love feel electric. But somewhere along the way, usually after months, sometimes after years, people stop doing that. Not because they stop caring, but because they start protecting. They stop saying scary things. They stop admitting loneliness. They smile through dinners and say, I'm fine, when they are the furthest thing from fine. Psychologist John Gottman calls this emotional withdrawal, and his research, drawn from decades of studying couples, found that emotional withdrawal predicts the end of a relationship more reliably than almost anything else, including cheating. Here's the cruel irony. The more someone loves you, the more they might hide from you. Because the higher the stakes, the greater the fear of disappointment. So they go quiet. They internalize, they hold the distance with both hands. And then one day, they meet someone who doesn't know them yet. Someone who sees the version of them they used to be. Someone who listens without the weight of history. Someone who doesn't have an opinion about the fight they had in 2019. That newness feels like freedom. Not because the other person is special, but because vulnerability is easy when the stakes feel low. This is point 1. The intimacy inversion. The very closeness that's supposed to protect a relationship can, paradoxically, become the wall inside it. But wait until you hear what's underneath that wall, because point 2 is where this gets really uncomfortable. Point 2, the unspoken contract. Every relationship runs on a contract. You probably never signed it. You may never have even discussed it, but it exists. It says things like, "You'll make me feel chosen," or "You'll make me feel seen. You'll be the person who truly knows me." The problem? Most people never read this contract to their partner. They assume it's understood. They assume love means automatic fluency in what the other person needs. And so the contract gets violated, quietly, daily, without either person realizing it. Dr. Esther Perel, one of the most respected voices in relationship psychology, describes this as the desire to reclaim lost parts of oneself. She spent decades interviewing people in the aftermath of affairs, and what she found shocked her. Many of them didn't describe their affair as an act of betrayal. They described it as an act of aliveness. Not lust, aliveness. They talked about feeling, for the first time in years, like they mattered, like they were interesting, like they existed outside of a role, outside of husband or wife or parent or provider. Here's what that actually means. They weren't breaking a promise to their partner. They were trying to keep a promise to themselves. That doesn't make it right, but it changes what it means entirely. And if you want to understand cheating, you have to sit with that discomfort. You have to be willing to ask the harder question. What is your relationship asking you to disappear into? Point 3 is about what happens in the brain, and this one will completely change the way you think about attraction. Point 3, the neurochemistry of newness. Your brain is not built for long-term love. Let's just say that directly. And the neurological state of new attraction, what scientists call limerence, is one of the most powerful altered states a human brain can enter. MRI studies show that early romantic love activates the same dopamine pathways as cocaine, not metaphorically, neurologically. And here's the cruel truth about those pathways. They habituate. The more familiar something becomes, the less dopamine it triggers. That's not a flaw in your relationship. That's just how the brain protects energy. But it means that the electricity of early love, that can't eat, can't sleep, heart-racing feeling, is chemically designed to fade. This is not failure. This is biology. The problem is that most people have never been told this. So when the electricity fades, they assume something is broken. They assume the love is gone. They assume the relationship is over. And then someone else sparks that feeling. And suddenly the brain interprets that spark as proof. This must be the real thing. But what they're actually feeling is just new, not better, not more real, just new. The couples who understand this have a significant advantage. They stop chasing the spark and start building something the spark was never designed to sustain. But most people never get that conversation. And point 4 is about exactly why. Point 4, the silence that costs everything. Let me tell you about the moment most affairs actually begin. And I don't mean the physical moment. I mean the emotional one. It almost always starts with a conversation that should have happened inside the relationship, but didn't. Not a conversation about attraction, a conversation about pain. I feel alone in this relationship. I don't feel desired anymore. I feel like you see right through me. I feel like I've stopped being a person to you and started being a function. These sentences go unsaid every single day in relationships around the world. Not because people don't feel them, because they are terrified of what saying them out loud might mean. What if they confirm it? What if nothing changes? What if I say I'm lonely and my partner says, I know, and I don't know how to fix it? That fear of honest conversation is one of the most corrosive forces in a relationship, because the longer it stays unspoken, the more those feelings look for somewhere else to go. Here's what I got wrong about this for a long time. I thought the silence was passive. I thought people just drifted into affairs because they weren't paying attention. But it's not passive. Silence is an active choice, and it costs everything. Most people figure this out too late, after the damage. After the conversation they should have had years ago finally happens, in a therapist's office or across a divorce lawyer's desk. But there's one more point, and this one is the hardest. This is the one that will stay with you. A significant portion of all affairs happen at a specific moment in a person's life. Not randomly, not casually. They happen when someone is quietly going through an identity crisis, a milestone birthday, a career collapse, a period of grief, a moment when they look in the mirror and can't recognize who they became and when they became it. These are the moments when people are most vulnerable to seeking outside validation, not because they stopped loving their partner, but because they stopped being sure of who they are. And relationships, no matter how loving, cannot always hold that weight. When one person is in free fall, the relationship can feel like the cage, not the anchor. The research on this is sobering. Studies consistently show that affairs spike in the late 30s and early 40s, precisely the age range most associated with major identity reevaluation. This is not a coincidence, it is a pattern, and it is deeply painfully human. No relationship is immune to the pressures of a person trying to find their way back to themselves. But the ones that survive, the ones that actually get stronger, are the ones where both people have learned how to hold space for that question together. When saying I don't know who I am right now doesn't mean I'm leaving. It means I need you to stay close while I figure it out. Remember the question I asked you at the beginning of this video? If cheating is really about a loss of self, then what is it about long-term love that makes so many people feel like they're disappearing? Here's the answer, and this is the part nobody says. Long-term love is one of the only relationships in human life where we are expected to be fully known and still stay, where we are expected to be seen completely and still be chosen. That is terrifying for both people, because the closer you let someone in, the more power they have to confirm your deepest fear, that the real you isn't enough. So people perform, they edit, they present, they become the version of themselves they think the relationship needs. And slowly, quietly, they lose track of who they actually are. Cheating, in most cases, is not a statement about the person being left. It is a desperate attempt, sometimes unconscious, almost always painful, to find a way back to a self that feels real. That doesn't excuse it. Broken trust is broken trust. Pain is pain. But understanding the why is the only way to actually address it, to actually build something different, to actually ask the right questions in your own relationship before it reaches a breaking point. The question that survives all of this research, all of these studies, all of these painful stories, is this: is your relationship a place where both of you are allowed to be fully human or just fully functional? Because if the answer is the latter, that's the conversation worth having tonight. And if this sparks something in you, if it made you want to understand what actually makes love last, then there's something you need to watch next. It's a video on the one thing long-term couples do differently. Not the tips you've seen everywhere, the actual thing. Don't close the tab. Keep going. If this video shifted something in you, hit subscribe. Not for me, because this channel is building a library of the conversations most people are too afraid to start, and you deserve to have them. The next video is already waiting. Go find out what love actually looks like when both people stop disappearing. Disclaimer: this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The psychological concepts and research cited reflect general academic and clinical findings and should not be taken as personal relationship advice. If you are experiencing relationship difficulties, infidelity, or emotional distress, please seek support from a licensed therapist or mental health professional. All perspectives shared are based on research and are not intended to excuse, minimize, or justify harmful behavior in any relationship.